The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited has officially commenced lifting refined petrol from the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. This development aligns with the federal government's statement that the refinery will begin distributing petrol to NNPC on September 15, 2024. And of course, that played out. Now, following this, the NNPC Limited issued a press release informing of the estimated pump prices of PMS from Dangote Refinery between 950 naira and 1,019 naira, depending on states and regions. However, Dangote Group has debunked NNPCL's claim as regards the price, telling Nigerians to await the technical subcommittee on naira-based crude sales to make an announcement. This morning, we're joined by Jide Pratt, COO, Aiona Nigeria and Country Manager, Trade Grid. Thank you so much for joining us live in our studios anyway.
Thank you, Lekon. Thanks for talking to me.
So we saw trucks load petrol from the Dangote plant yesterday after so much back and forth as regards what the operationality would be and what the pricing would be and who the off-taker would be and who the sole buyer will be. But then when you look at everything that has played out up until yesterday, what are your thoughts, or what were your thoughts running to your mind, most especially when the lifting started?
Okay, thanks again, Lekon. A few things. I think first and foremost, the lifting has started. So how we got here, in my opinion, is not exactly the greatest. And why do I say so? Between the refinery, between the NNPC, planning a logistics operation, ideally, you have some time. It might have been easier if there was a joint press conference between the two parties who had sat down and spoken for a while. The refinery has taken, let's say, 4 to 5 years to come on stream. So what it did mean is that we knew it was going to come on stream. Calculations around pricing, we should have had a somewhat guide in terms of what the pricing should be for petrol. It took us this long, and again I say, the NNPC might have done a lot of things wrong or right, but one thing that they've done is that they've taken us now to what you call a guided price. Those guided prices have shown us what the indices they've used. And I mean, if you look at the statement from NNPC, I believe they used a gasoline index, which was something they referenced. They added their premiums to it. And all in all, we're able to see categorically that what they're saying is that about 55 cents per liter is quote and unquote the cost from the Dangote Refinery. So one more thing I must add is this. To get to that price, you find out that when it comes to vessels and trading, a lot of things are sold in metric tons. There's a specific gravity that they've used. So ideally for petrol, that would be 1341. So if you divided what that per metric ton price was by 1341, it will get you that 0.55 in terms of cents. Now we sell in Nigeria naira. So you have to multiply that cents by the exchange rate, and I believe they've referenced about 1,600 thereabouts to be able to get to their landing point, assumed pump price after adding distribution. So we're there.
Okay, so we've actually given quite an analysis as regards the pricing and what would have gone into it. And sequel to the lifting of petrol, the NNPC released these estimated pump prices as we saw in the slides. Now we are looking at the fact that they bought from Dangote at 898, as been suggested by NNPC, and they expect to sell at 950 up to about 1,019 compared to the regions. But Dangote has come out to debunk this particular claim, describing it as misleading. So whatever analysis that we try to give to this narrative does not really hold waters for now. And a lot of Nigerians are wondering, what is all this around the pricing? We need to have a clarity on it.
So, I mean, you make a valid point now, but whether Dangote as a refinery refutes or not, don't forget their initial reaction with their disclaimer before this breakdown was that they sold in US dollars. So they had said that the initial conversation or document that NNPC had sent out was incorrect. Remember, coming into this morning, NNPC sent a second document, which is what we're looking at now. So what it does mean is that if the Dangote refinery believes that the pricing that has been put out prior to now was incorrect and they've done a disclaimer, then what needs to happen now is that they need to share something if, quote and unquote, they think that what has been shared is incorrect. There are some triggers that we must look at. NNPC has rightly trade based on the gasoline index. They've referenced the gasoline index. So that's number one. The second thing they've done is that they've referenced an exchange rate. So it's very, very simple. If the Dangote Refinery feels that these are incorrect, then I think at this stage, if they were held back before based on a non-disclosure, there's nothing that is non-disclosing anymore at this stage. You must state two things. What price did we sell if it's in cents? What exchange rate did we use? Because at this point in time, the only person that has now provided a full guideline, contrary to what I would have expected, is the NNPC. In my opinion, that is what we'll use as the basis for this price.
Now, we even see that, fuel imports, according to our understanding, are being inspected by independent marketers. And we're seeing the global price fall a couple of weeks now. The NNPC has given us a guide, but for Nigerians, they're wondering maybe that's, most especially import from the international suppliers by independent marketers could in a way force, a reduction in the price because it will serve as a form of competition. But I'd like to find out from you if that could play out.
Now, it could, and let's be clear about two things. And we've said this again. There's a trigger for gasoline in terms of a pricing index. So if you loaded a cargo, let's say 2 weeks ago, the prices were higher then. If you're loading a cargo today, the prices are dropping. If you go abroad to bring in a vessel, it's taking you 14 to 21 days. So what that means is that you're pricing around a bill of lading. Now, the dynamics of how you price are neither here nor there for the purposes of this conversation. But what it does say is that ideally, if as a trader or as a marketer, I believe the price that the Dangote Refinery is selling ex-refinery is not something I like, or it's not something that helps my marketing, then I have that right, or I should have that right to go ahead and import. The question is this: if there's a paucity of FX in Nigeria, why do I want to go and import if I know that by the 1st of October, this transaction dynamics moves from the US dollars to the naira per liter? But those are business decisions any marketer would take. I do believe that if two things happen, if the exchange rate goes down, and if this international oil prices continue to go down, then we might get to a stage where importing might be cheaper. But I also do not believe the Dangote Refinery at that time will keep to their premiums. They might begin to discount their premiums so that, they stay in the market. But does it bring competition? Definitely, and I think it's way about time, in my opinion.
Yeah, but well, we're still looking at the issue around this pricing and the probable hikes that we've seen. Wouldn't that also spike the inflation figures in the country that the finance minister once said had already peaked? Because, of course, businesses that actually rely on these particular sources of energy to power their businesses would now be paying even more to acquire it.
No doubt about that, Lekon. But this is where I think that we need to be a bit more forward-thinking. And I say this because I think that as a country, we've sat on an own goal, which is CNG. We're having conversations today about PMS and how it triggers inflation, because that's what most people use. From the farms, to get around, everybody is dependent on PMS. We're not having these conversations around AGO, and we're also not having these conversations around jet fuel. So the question is this: the CNG initiative is 1 year old. Why are we not more aggressive in terms of public transportation, ride-share apps, in terms of ride-share vehicles, things that move farm produce? And why am I saying this? Because if you want to fight inflation, then what it is that you want to try and reduce that dependency on PMS as a trigger. CNG today, if you're going to buy it per kg or standard cubic metric, you're going to buy it at about 230 to 250 naira per liter, quote and unquote. What that means is that the conversations around PMS at a certain stage as a trigger for inflation, if we've done what we needed to have done as far back as 5 to 10 years up to this point, but we haven't. So what do we need to do going forward? We need to get more aggressive on that. If you take the pressure of PMS off going to work by bus or cab, that's number one. If you take it off moving foodstuff from farms to point of sales to market, that's number two. Then it can begin to de-emphasize that trigger in terms of inflation. But that's what I said. I think it's an own goal. This will trigger inflation, but if we go faster in terms of CNG implementation. It's not just a nice to have to talk about it. We need to get cars converted. We need to get buses converted. And I do think we've started a bit too late. But if we increase this process, then that is what will tackle the inflation if we take that pressure off PMS.
So talking about the issue around CNG and the initiative by government, I'm wondering how well we'll be able to progress with that. Why am I saying this? Of course, a lot of people have come out to complain that the price of conversion itself is on the high side. Not everyone can afford it. Then the conversion points. Then the point where people will be able to access CNG to fuel their cars. Then the possibility of these particular stations, being cut across the different regions, or different states that are in need of it. Those are the issues. So when we've not even concluded on, making it broader. You talked about aggressive campaign, but it doesn't look aggressive as we've seen. How are we even going to accelerate that aggressiveness when it comes to the campaign? When do we start relying on, CNG as a means of powering our automobiles? These are the questions the Nigerians are equally asking.
You make a very good point, Leko, and back to what I've said, we're where we are. And that's why I called it an own goal when I started, by saying that we should have gotten to these stages in the last 4 to 5 years. Sadly, we haven't. So look at it this way. If we want to get aggressive, then it's a few things. Mother stations, daughter stations. Use the existing infrastructure network we already have. You've got MEMAN members. You've got IPMAN. You've got DAPMA. So all these guys have retail outlets. So let's start with what is the lowest hanging fruit. Can we begin to put a gas cylinder in each one of these stations? Can we begin to look at, because you're not going to pipe CNG as we are today. So you're going to do what you call virtual transportation. You're going to use kind of trucks with horizontal cylinders. LPG is a low-hanging fruit. Can we also begin to look at that? Electric vehicles, as much as we say we don't have power, we're also making some strides in terms of solar energy, renewable energy. So what it is that to accelerate this now, I hear you and I agree with you. We've dwelt too long on this. But to get aggressive, we must take everything as a basket and try and thrive on all those. The places that have excess sunlight, up north and everything, begin to look. And I think some people are already doing this with, if you look at the ride apps, I think there are a few cars now that are electric around some airports. I also think some people who do dispatch, like companies like EFTD, are also using bikes at this stage. So look on what it is that we're where we are. Aggressiveness means we need to start now. But a few things. Let's have milestones that are weekly. Let's have milestones that are monthly. But we can't just wait 12 months and say at the end of 1 year, this is what. No, we can't do that. We now need to come into smaller timelines and get a bit aggressive so that it goes round. That's what I would say.
Okay, so earlier ago, you actually threw a weight behind the NNPC, according to the statement it rolled out. Now, this same NNPC, in an earlier statement, said it will only fully offtake PMS from the DRL if the market prices of PMS are higher than the pump prices in Nigeria. Currently, oil prices in the global market is on a downward spiral, as I said earlier. Regardless, NNPC has now started lifting petrol from Dangote. Now, don't you see a bit of discrepancy and hasty statements coming from the NNPCL as regards the Dangote Refinery and the role it is playing in the sector? Of course, Dangote is a business person. It's coming to the game and it's trying as much as possible to stay in business while also protect its assets. But can we always rely on statements coming from the NNPCL when it issues one?
You see, personally, I would always say this. I would take statements coming from the NNPC with a pinch of salt. And why do I say so? They seem to be playing a game of being both a regulator and a player. You shouldn't have both. The NMDPRA needs to do her job and take away regulation issues away from the NNPC. The second thing is this. If you looked at NNPC as an entity, it leaves a lot to be desired. We're talking about this and not being able to trust what they say, because if you look at the antecedents, and you said it right, you come around with 4 different press statements in this, 2 weeks? It does mean that at the point where the engine room is, something is not right. We said that again, and we've talked about how organizations should not be this, let me say, poorly managed. For me, corporate governance is missing in that organization. And we need to get to a stage where it's a proper board structure. There's a lot of talk about how NNPC has become a limited liability company. But while that is fine, 100% of these shares are still owned by government. Now, it's not to say that companies that are run by government cannot be run better. Saudi Aramco is something that we all lay reference to. They're well run. But you see, the point is this. If corporate governance standards in that organization do not go up, if a management that is basically driven by a board is not in place, if an audit that is proper and forensic is not done, we might see more of this. And with all due respect, there are two ministers in that industry who need to just tackle the NNPC and make it what it needs to be, a going concern. That's what I would say on that.
Okay, so, well, as a typical Nigerian, I'm more concerned about, having to buy PMS at a reduced price. And Dangote, in its rejoinder said it sold the product to NNPCL in dollars with a lot of savings now against what NNPCL is currently importing. Now, this means that Dangote Refinery offered a more cost-effective option to NNPCL, saving the corporation a significant amount of money. So doesn't this suggest that even as the collaboration would help reduce the country's dependence on foreign oil and save money, then it should potentially lead to lower fuel prices for consumers? I'm just being cheeky.
I think that that's a fallacy to believe that once a refinery is up and running, it means prices will be cheaper. And why did I say that? The feed for every refinery is still going to be crude oil, which is a commodity that is sold in the greenback. It's sold in the US dollars. So now, while they can say categorically that they've offered discounts, then what it means is that with those discounts at this rate, exchange rate, crude oil prices, they can offer a discount. They will take hedging techniques as a refinery. That's fine. But you see, what makes crude oil prices, or well, let me say, what makes petroleum products cheaper is the fact that freight is a positive. Refinery efficiency are a positive. So you see, with those two things, the refinery has a Nelson complexity index of about 10.2 or 10.3. What that means is that it can crack any crude, and it can crack it to get the best output. She's a new refinery. Those efficiencies are there. So what it is that she can look at the long game and say that for so and so material that I'm giving to NNPC, I can discount it. But there are further conversations around how do we sell crude from October 1? Are we going to sell at open market selling price? Are we going to sell at open market selling price of crude less so and so amount in discount? All these things play into it. But it also means that, and we've touched on that later when you said that people were going to import as well. Free up this market. If Jide and Sons believes that, look, I can give more value by bringing in 10,000 metric tons, let them do it. All the regulator needs to do is regulate the quality and the quantities coming in. If Dangote feels that, look, market is moving away from me, they can offer further discounts. NNPC ideally should now become an organization that actually looks at where she can give value to the market. If that is not happening, then it means that we still have not gotten this mix right.
And the fact that, the Dangote Refinery facility can actually refine 650,000 barrels per day, and then NNPC can only provide 385,000 barrels, that's another conundrum that we'll get to talk about some other time. And people are asking if this partnership or collaboration will ever be sustainable between the both of them. But then Jide Pratt, COO, Aiona Nigeria and Country Manager at Trade Grid. It was nice talking to you at this time. Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you, Leko. I appreciate it.